everyone, and welcome to the third of the four sessions under HR Masterclass. And the format of today's session is that there'll be a presentation for about 30 to 40 minutes, and that will be followed by Q&A. And you can put your questions in the chat as during the presentation, also during the Q&A. But if you wish to ask your question directly to the faculty here, you can raise your hand. There's an option to raise your hand. You can do so, and we'll unmute you, and you can ask the question directly. Welcome everyone, and we have with us today Ms. Lata Nambisin, who's going to take us take the class on building a high performance organization. She is currently the managing partner at Savitor Business Consulting. Savitor Business Consulting LLP focuses on individual and organizational change and transformation. Some of their assignments include executive coaching, competency mapping, and competency-based learning programs, full cycle leadership development programs, organization redesign, sales organization effectiveness, the design of incentive plans, organization culture, performance management systems built on concepts of OKR, employer branding, employee engagement, and HR team mentoring. Their client companies are in the IT services, product development, ITES, media, and financial services sector. Prior to Savito, she was the President, People and Culture of Servion Global Solution. On behalf of TiE Chennai and everyone present here, I would like to welcome you, ma'am, and request you to take over the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. Great pleasure to be here with all of you again. Thoroughly enjoyed interacting with you, especially the question answer sessions from the last two rounds. Looking forward to today's session, especially the questions, and based on the learnings from the past, I've kept enough time for questions, so that should really be an enjoyable session. So once again, warm welcome to this session. Today's topic is on building a high performance organization. I'm just going to share my screen. Yeah. So building a high performance organization is, in my mind, one of the toughest areas for a leader in today's organizations. It's a HR challenge that most leaders struggle with at some time or the other. And I'm sure all of you who are on this call are also in the same boat at some point or the other, either personally or through your organizations. You've seen the struggle on building a high performance organization. How do we measure performance? How do we set performance expectations? How do we clarify performance expectations? How do we deal with misunderstandings on performance and performance feedback and all the emotional connect based on that? So there is an entire challenge around this area. I've seen organizations trying to build really complex systems. Some of them have some tremendous mathematical formula that they have. You need mathematical geniuses to be able to decipher that and do that. And they really build a whole amount of complexity in the hope of getting it right. Now, is that a great way of doing it? We don't know. We'll look at it as we go along through the session. But on the other side of it, I've also heard people say that the best performance management system is a blank sheet of paper. Yes, a blank sheet of paper, because they say that if your people are absolutely clear on the goals that you're driving, there is really no need for a performance management system. So that's the science behind it. What we will look at in today's session, and then look at answering this question whether this is really the best way to do this. So I'm sorry. Yeah. So we'll start with what are the elements of a high performance organization. Is it just a performance management system, or are there other elements that we should look at when we seek to build a high performance organization? What are some common performance management methodologies? This was a question that some of you had sent to me on this for this session, so I've put in a slide on that. And then I've really looked at ground up, how do you really build a great performance management system? So what are some of the philosophical pillars that you should look at? How do you plan for performance? What is the planning system that you should adopt? Once you've done that, and most organizations struggle with that, they spend 2 to 3 months setting goals across the organization. That's how long it takes to ensure that everybody has a goal sheet. There is umpteen follow-up by the HR teams before it is all done. Having done that, there is a collective sigh of relief. Okay, wow, we've done this. Now we can close this and revisit this at the end of the year. Now that's where the whole system starts to crumble. So it's just not enough to plan for performance, to set performance goals. You also need to ensure performance. How do we do that is something that we will look at. We will look at what are the best ways to review performance, what are some of the challenges, how do you really manage it. We will look at an operating rhythm really, and how continuous feedback. You must all have read about this, that many organizations are doing away today with the end of year performance review system. So how do they do that? It's not that they're saying there is no performance management system, while they may verbally say it that way. What really happens is that there is a continuous system of reviews every month, every fortnight, every week, with total rigor. It's followed, and that really helps ensure performance. And then we will go on to looking at how do we do this across the organization. Are there ways that we can scale this? Because some of us also run organizations which have more than 100 employees. So how do you really ensure that you don't spend the whole year looking at this? We will look at aligning rewards to performance. What are the different kinds of rewards? How should you align it to performance? We will look at doing things remote, some of the unique challenges that organizations are today facing, and how do they address it? And of course, as always, I'll close with some mantras for success. So this is really the structure of today's session. I really termed it as Measuring What Matters. This is a great book by a person called John Doerr. If you are interested in reading, do read it. It's a great book on performance management, one of the Bibles really today. A lot of large companies, large organizations follow it. It's about a concept called the OKR. We'll talk about that. But that's why I've called the session Measure What Matters. Okay. But before we get there, before we look at measuring what matters, before we look at the performance management system, some questions that you must ask yourself, and which are very critical. You may have the best of performance management systems, but if you don't have these elements organized, your organization may not really be able to build a high performance culture. The first question, and not in any particular order really, because some of these questions are as important as the others. Does your organization have the right organization structure? Many times, organizations look at structure from the view of people who are in the organization. So they say, oh, this person, he's very senior, so I cannot have this person reporting to this lady because she's not that senior. But then look at the roles that they do. Is there a need for those roles to report it to each other to ensure effectiveness? Questions to ask yourself. Is your organization structure objective? Does it look at what needs to be delivered and what is the best way to deliver that? It's a tremendous tool in your hands to ensure a good performance, a high performance organization. The second question is, are roles and accountabilities clarified adequately? Are people very clear? Or is there a lot of shared, we're all in this together, which is a good thing. But from a responsibility point of view, it is important that you make sure that each person knows what do I need to deliver to ensure that the company delivers what we are supposed to do. Are employees engaged and upbeat? Very important. because everybody is drooping down and saying that, I know this is such an uphill task, we just can't do it. Very difficult for you to meet your goals. So important to have, especially your leadership team, totally engaged, upbeat, confident about how you're going to do this. And your performance management system really plays a big role in inspiring that confidence. Do employees have a deep understanding of the top goals of the company and understand how their jobs support these goals, let alone how their jobs support these goals? Very often, when I interact with leadership teams in the companies I consult with, I ask them, are you aware of the top goals of the company? Sometimes they revert back to me, why should I know the top goals of the company as long as I know my goals? Not good enough. Because what happens then is that you are looking narrowly at what you want to achieve. And sometimes we need to go beyond that to ensure that the company meets its goals. So ensuring that your organization understands, and if you are CEOs on this call or HR leaders, it is important for you to continuously communicate. These are the top goals of our company. These are the things that we are aspiring to. Next question is, do they know what metrics and performance measures matter most to the business? And finally, is your culture aligned to your strategy? So and we'll talk about this a lot more in the next session, which is on employee engagement, the role that culture plays. How do you really align your culture? How do you build culture? How do you shape culture? We'll look at all of that in the next session. But all of these elements play a critical role in ensuring a high performance organization. It's not just about a performance management system. So that's what I'm saying, that there is structure, there is the HR strategy, the culture, the HR systems and processes. How do they support a high performance organization? Do you really track performance well? For example, one of the challenges we talk about when we look at what happened during the work from home is that many organizations felt that we are unable to track productivity. So how do you do that? Employee engagement is another one, learning is there, and of course a performance management system, which is the focus of this session. So with that context, I'm now moving into the crux of the presentation. So wanted to just let you know that it's not just about a performance management system. It's really about a comprehensive view, and you'll notice that that's a theme that runs through every session that I do, that it's so important to look at things comprehensively. HR cannot sustain in isolation. HR has to be deeply embedded with the business, needs to understand the business dynamics, and therefore design an appropriate system. Some of the methodologies, I said we would share this, some of the methodologies that you could adopt. First is the balanced scorecard. Many of you would have heard this. My personal view is that the balanced scorecard is not a performance measurement tool. It's an amazing tool for strategy because it looks at the 4 quadrants and what do we want to do: financial results, customer results, process results, and people results. It's a great tool for looking at strategy. OKRs, which is objectives and key results. This is really about what the book Measure What Matters comprises. This methodology says that you may look at what needs to be done, but you also need to look at how will you achieve it. So objectives are what, key results are how. Then of course there is the time-tested KRAs, the key result areas which you have across the organization. You have policy deployment, which is a way of taking the policy, the top goals of the company and deploying it across the organization. It was extremely popular in the 90s, regaining popularity now because they're seeing it as a great way to align the entire organization. There is mission analysis, which is drawn from the Army. The US Army first used it, and now of course many armies use it. It's a great way to take what needs to be done and break it up into really sub-tasks and the sub-actions and track them every month with great discipline and rigor. What this calls for is a tremendous focus on focus on review and that and ensuring it happens. Okay. Coming to the next one, which is the philosophical pillars that we need to look at when we design a system. As always, I say that keep it simple. The more complex you make it, the more difficult it becomes for employees to understand. It takes huge administrative ability to administer the system, and it just dies down by itself because by the time they finish their first step, everybody's exhausted. So just ensure that you keep it really simple, and we'll walk through how can we do that. Keep it very focused. So there are companies which look at, for each person, there are multiple goals because there are so many expectations. So a particular leader may carry 13 to 20 goals. Absolutely difficult to go through. Keep it very focused. 3 to 7 goals. If you can keep it at 3 objectives or 3 goals for each person, that's fantastic. Don't go more than 7. Keep it very focused. It should be sustainable, which is also about building a simple system. Ensure that whatever you do for the future. It is something that we can do year after year and does not require too much of thinking into it. It must clarify ownership and shared responsibility. In today's matrix organizations, everything is about teamwork. There is nobody, not even the R&D person, who can work in a silo. It's all about shared responsibility. But at the same time, you want to clarify to each person, what are you accountable for? So clarifying ownership on one side and clarifying shared responsibility. Your system must really comprise both. And it must be inclusive. Organizations very often do a great job of setting goals for the sales team, maybe for the operations team, but for HR and finance and all the other shared services functions, it's really left to the person to decide. Doesn't work that way. It has to be inclusive. Everybody must be working towards the same goal. That's the best way that you can do it. So that's about the philosophy and how we will design it. Some of the key steps, and these are drawn from all those different methodologies that I spoke about, but these are time tested. In my 30 years of experience, people. So who are the people most concerned with it? HR is one person. Or maybe the production leader is also another person who needs to contribute. Or you may say that I need to grow revenue for this product line by this much. So who are the people who will carry that goal? It will be the sales leader. It could be one of the product line leaders. So accordingly, you decide who contributes to which goal. And from there comes the mission for each leader, which is the purpose for each leader's role. The purpose of my role is to do this. My mission is to deliver this in order to reach the company mission of this. Why do we do that? We do that to ensure that each leader's mission is aligned to the company mission. From there, we look at each leader's goals. So we look at top 3 to 7 goals for each of the leaders. Ideally, this should be all done together so that everybody has access to everyone else's. So for example, you'll have situations where the sales leader looks at the production leader's goals and says that, how does this fit into what I want to drive? How does this help? I need you to take this goal. So that kind of, so that ensures that the whole organization is in sync. And then it's not just enough to put down goals. Most organizations stop here. And this is a mistake that many of us make in building high performance organizations. It's not enough to stop with goals, measures, and targets. You also need to look at how will I achieve. So which is why I said the why, which is the company mission, the purpose, the what, which is the goals, measures, and targets, and the how, which is how will I achieve these goals, what are the main actions against each goal, what are the sub-actions against each goal with timelines and dependencies. Now, when we look at the operating review, you'll see why these timelines are important. But if you do this, I can assure you, your chances of hitting your performance objectives for the year as a company grow by almost 80 to 90%. That is the kind of reliability that a good system, well executed, can really have for you. Okay, so this is the planning phase. Most of the time, this itself takes huge effort, but in the first year, it is likely to take some time. It is likely to take 3 or 4 sittings before you get it right. But as you go along, you'll find that it gets easier and easier. From there, we move into the implementation phase. Now, this is very important. As I said, it is not that you can set goals and forget about it till the end. The whole backbone of a performance management system is the monthly cadence of reviews and the continuous conversations. So what do most companies, best companies do? They have a dashboard which is populated every month on an ongoing basis. And every month, the leadership team sits together and reviews that leadership board. Once they've done that, supposing, for example, I find that in HR, I had committed that in July, I will hire 20 people. I've not managed to do that. Now, the team sits together and says, okay, Lata, you have not managed to do this. What can we do to help you to do this? So everybody contributes, I guess. So it's a shared responsibility while I'm accountable. Post that, the CEO sits with me and says, you know, it wasn't, it has actually impacted the company when you've not met your goals. So how can we ensure that this goes forward, that you don't feel alone in the struggle? What can we do to make it better? So there are continuous conversations. Now, somebody had raised a question to me on this for this session, saying, how do we deal with the stress of performance management, of non-performance or performance management? Now, the stress comes out of surprise. At the end of the year, I think I have done very well, and then I'm told that I've not done very well. That stresses me out. That causes conflict and all of it. Instead, if I was having a continuous conversation on my performance, there is no question of ambiguity. Everybody is clear on what my performance is. So that's really the implementation phase. I would ideally recommend a monthly cadence with a conversation post that if somebody has not met their goals, so that you ensure that everybody is continuously meeting their goals. Okay, so that's the implementation phase. We did the planning phase, the implementation phase, and then of course the review phase, which is the nightmare for leaders and employees. First is of course the performance review discussion. Now, in the performance review discussion, that's what is this point on past, current, and future. I've found that a best practice is, you know, if you've done your monthly reviews and monthly, there is continuous feedback, spend some time, perhaps 30% of the time on the past, but really 70% of the time on the future. A great performance review discussion does that, because then I'm going out of the review discussion totally excited about the future, about what all I can do. The goals for the next year are already running in my mind, and that's really the best kind of performance review discussion you can have. And then there is the art of giving and receiving feedback. Now, the best leaders are very good at this. They know how to give feedback such that the person really understands what has gone wrong, understands the seriousness of it, but yet goes out with the hope that I can make this better. Giving feedback is an art. Receiving feedback is also an art. And that's really part of culture building and all of that, but the continuous reviews help that. Set up exclusive time. You know, all of us are rushed, but it just doesn't make sense for us to say, hey, I have 5 minutes now. Why don't I finish this performance feedback, because I have HR sitting on my head for this. Don't do that. You know that performance assessment time comes at this time of the year. Set up exclusive time with the person. Past, current, and future is really about what I just said, about spending less time on the past, some time on the current, a lot of time on the future. And the last point is the most important point. Preparation on both sides is very key. You need to have data. You cannot say, I think you did this, I think you could have done better. You need to go with data always. That's the best way to take stress out of the system, to be credible in the whole process and to appear objective and fair. And all of those are great goals for the performance management system: credibility, objectivity, transparency, fairness. These are all what all of us want to strive. So if you do this for your leadership team, that really covers an entire process. And so you start by setting clear direction. You have focused, aligned execution. You conduct regular progress reviews and make timely course corrections. Sometimes there are new things that happen. So for example, the work from home happened and you had to make, and people would have had to make some changes in the goals that they set, organization objectives, all of that. So how do you make corrections for all of that? See, how can I work through the situation? Now, this is a very robust process if you follow this. So this is the operating rhythm. In any organization, it is impossible for you to do this process. It is a difficult process. It takes leadership time and effort to do it across the organization. Therefore, a good way to do this is for all employees in routine jobs, you set performance standards. You define performance standards that don't change. So some examples that I've given. So for example, quality. You say that the percentage of error should be such and such a thing. Or you say on-time delivery, there should be no delays beyond so many hours or days or whatever works in your system. Productivity. So for standard jobs, so for example, an operator on a production floor, set performance standards. You can even print those forms because they don't need to change, and put them up all over your shop floor so that make it visible so that employees are able to see it. In work from home times, make them into screensavers so that employees can see it. When they log into the intranet, they should be able to see what are the performance standards that I have to do. So constantly din it into them. Do reviews for the team with each of these. Have contests, have competitions, do all of that around this so that it's ingrained into them. Ensure it is easily measured and ensure that these capture the outcomes that you expect from those roles. These are for all the routine jobs in the organization. Most often, anything which is below the manager level can be converted into a performance standard form. That's a very efficient way of really what your ideal performance management system should be. In terms of rewards, multiple rewards, there are of course the tangible rewards which we are all aware of, performance bonuses which should be strictly linked to quantitative performance data. Don't make it judgmental, ideally it should be quantitative. Increments which is based on performance appraisal as well as perhaps a competency assessment. Promotions which are based on competency assessments. Last session we saw competencies and how do you define competencies, how do you measure them, all of that. Stock options, given that you are, many of you run small and medium enterprises, great way to attract talent and reward talent. The only point to note is that when you design a stock option scheme, ensure you make a dynamic one and not a static one, because that way you'll be able to peg it to performance year after year. So these are all various ways that you can reward people. Always ensure that your rewards are linked with performance. And of course, there are intangible rewards. There are new skills and capabilities, and there is the opportunity to impact. All of these are intangible rewards that you can give someone who's doing a great job in performing. So finally, I'm coming to almost to the end of my presentation, and then I'll open it up for questions. I see a few raised hands, so I'll make time for that. Making it work remote, most important is clarity. Clarity in terms of what people are supposed to be doing. Continuous planned reviews. Ensure that the calendar is set out far in advance. Everybody logs in. Always insist that people come in with their videos on so that you're able to see them. You know, in one of the sessions, I remember someone asked, how do you make out body language? How can you see whether an employee is angry? Those are all huge challenges in making it work remote. So you give performance feedback and you're never sure how the person is reacting to it. One way to do that is to ensure it's always on video calls. These are simple points and no rocket science. All of you are aware of it. But you know, sometimes it just helps to be reminded of it. And then, of course, tracking systems and automation is another way to ensure that you make it work remote. Some mantras for success. A good performance management scheme should cover the why, the what, and the how. Individual goals must be aligned to company goals. There should be a continuous review. Avoid surprises. There's no need to surprise someone at the end of the year. And the best performance management systems are always aligned with rewards. So these are some mantras for success. But like I said, performance management is the most difficult, it's really the most difficult area for most leaders, and one that if you manage well, can really take your company to a high performance area. So with that, I'm stopping the presentation. As promised, we have 30 minutes for questions and answers. Happy to take your questions and answers. So Priya, how would you like to do this?
Yeah, we have one question. Okay, Jawahar has raised his hand, so probably I'll just unmute him. And
hi, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am.
Jawahar, how are you?
How are you, ma'am? Fine, ma'am. Thank you. Wonderful presentation, ma'am. Thanks a lot. Lot of good insights.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I have at least 4 to 5 questions, but I'll first ask 3 questions one by one, and then I'll leave the session open to others to ask questions. And maybe later, if you have time, I will ask the rest of the 2 questions.
Sure.
Okay. Ma'am, my first question is, whenever we do performance review, always there is a subjectivity and an objectivity, right? In case of subjectivity, so I can say this person has a good attitude, but somebody else might say, no, this guy doesn't have that attitude. You know, it cannot be measured actually, you know, an attitude or teamwork. You know, there is some amount of subjectivity into it. So I am seeing a lot of bosses use this performance as a tool to, get rid of their subordinates whom they don't like, whom they have personal vengeance against. So how do we tackle this in an organization? You know, I need your insights, ma'am.
Yeah. Jawahar, you've raised a very, very pertinent question. And the point of, the best organizations also, when they look at performance management, they don't really measure attitude, because what does good attitude do? Good attitude gives you great results. What is the point of having an employee with great attitude who does not achieve results? So most important is to put down what are the outcomes that you want from this person, and look at outcomes. What are the outcomes so an outcome-based performance management system is what works. I would really recommend that attitude is not something that should count for performance management, because if you have great attitude, you should have achieved great results.
But the problem here is, ma'am, the boss and the subordinate, they don't get along. And when they don't get along, it shows up on their performance. Even though the subordinate does really good work, the boss takes it as a tool to finish him off during this performance review. So when they don't get along well, that really shows up on the performance review. So how do we, remove this part of it during performance review? they try to find something, some kind of subjectivity, so that
No, it's, I think, a very real problem, and I don't want to I don't want to brush it aside and say that it's something that we can. I've seen this in almost every organization that I have worked with. There are always such cases. To some extent, what would help is for the leader himself and herself, or even the HR leader, to really sit with the manager and counsel them and see that they understand this. Because very often what happens is the manager thinks nobody else knows, but everybody knows that this is what is happening. So how do you step in over there and ensure, and which is where also the business reviews, all of those give you an opportunity to really understand what is happening on the ground.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. And my other question is, I have seen organizations where one person reports to two people, one direct report and one on dotted lines to other person. So here, this person always goes through a lot of emotions, having two bosses. And,
Yes.
so how do you, who is going to rate him, and how do we tackle the situation, ma'am?
Yeah, I think that's again another very good question, Jawahar. I've seen this happen because in today's organizations, matrix structures, there's always a band of people who are doing matrix reporting. Best way to do that is to have the direct boss do the assessment with the inputs from the dotted line manager. Always ensure that both voices are heard, and ensure that the dotted line manager gives it in writing so that the leader has visibility into what both sides are saying. And if there is a conflict, it's really for the leader of the organization or HR to pull them both together into a room and to look at specific instances. Always ask for, just like we saw in recruitment, where we said behavioral interviewing is about asking for specific instances. Even in performance management, ask for specific instances. Why are you saying what you are saying if there is a conflict? But you do need both sides to give inputs for this.
Okay, but in HR principle, is it okay to have two bosses in an organizational matrix? Because it's very
in today's world, it is difficult not to do that. So most often, for example, if you were to have, I'm so sorry to keep giving you the examples of HR executives. My apologies to all the HR guys on this call. But if you were to have a HR executive in a factory, obviously the person has to report to the factory head, but also needs to have a dotted line reporting with the HR head at the corporate level, just so that you ensure that policies are aligned, that people don't do whatever they like. Now, the HR guy in the factory has a really tough time. I've been there, so I know that. Because what happens is the factory leader has a certain way that they want to shape their organization and all of that. But you're also hearing continuously from your HR leader in corporate, do things this way. So it is set up for conflict, and I understand why you're asking this. But in today's organizations, extremely difficult to walk away from this reality. So we will probably.
So as a subordinate, so whose command should I take? I mean, the dotted line guy or the direct guy? Because if two people ask me to do two different things in a given day, so who should I answer to? It's kind of really.
I would actually say that since there is a direct boss, the person should write to the direct boss with a copy to the dotted line boss, saying that these are the things on my table and this is my priority. Please tell me, both of you, if you are okay with this. Now, that is a smart way of managing the situation, but it is a difficult situation. And very often, the poor employee does not have the maturity to think that they have to do this. But if you can guide them and tell them that if you have a matrix reporting, ensure you keep both of them in the loop. To some extent, it will make their life easier.
Okay, ma'am. My third question is, say an employee performs really well as an individual, but in terms of his achievement of goals, he's not an individual, right? Because he's dependent on so many other people to complete his tasks. So at the end of the performance, at the 3 months period, say, if he is not able to achieve certain goals, it may be because the production team did not give him certain data, or the quality team did not give him some data. So, it's because of others' poor performance, this guy's performance gets affected. So, but, when you review him, he didn't achieve his goal. So, how do you compensate for those things in a performance review?
Yeah. So one of the ways that I've managed this is to ensure that there is that I keep a box for constraints that the person has faced, and additional work, additional remarks. So what then gets captured there, or the same way that you said. Uh, Halfway through the year, when I'm focused on doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I get pulled in for a special project, and that makes it very difficult for me to fulfill what I'm expected to do. So that's where you record that, and the leadership level, you actually take a call and say, yes, this guy didn't achieve, but here are some constraints, here are some additional things that the person did. So give some leeway for that, because if it is just based on numbers and metrics, then you don't need leaders, isn't it?
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you for the questions.
Thank you, Jawahar. We have quite a few questions in the chat. The first question is from Jayashree. In most cases, the KPI needs to be defined, driven, measured by business unit. Isn't HR role is more facilitation on implementation of the KPI framework?
Absolutely. HR's role is absolutely facilitation, because we do want the business leaders to own this. Very important that HR understands the business though, so that you can facilitate in a meaningful way. You can ask good questions. You understand the employee's concern. You can preempt concerns, but really HR is a facilitator. It is the business leader who's supposed to set goals and who's supposed to own the system.
Yeah. Next question is also from her. In many organizations, the top performers and low performers are identified for further focus. What is a suggestion for retaining top performance and support alignment of low performers?
Okay. So ideally, Jayashree, I'm taking this to the next level, which is about a performance potential matrix. There are some people who don't perform well this year, but who have tremendous potential, and it would be very short-sighted for me to trash that person saying that he's not performed when actually he's a high potential employee. So I would actually look at both performance and potential in terms of looking at what actions are required. Now, retaining high performers, great way is to help them become even better. So give them opportunities to acquire more skills. You could reward them in terms of long-term benefits, like either a long-term deferred performance bonus or stock options, any of that. And if your organization is small enough that you can look at it individually, it makes great sense to look at your top performers individually and look at what motivates this person. So how can I shape rewards accordingly? Now, increasingly, as the world is moving to scale and automation and all of that, there is also a reverse trend that is happening, because you have BI and everything else giving you the opportunity to do a highly customized offering. So even if, for example, I'm buying jewelry, the jeweler knows what kind of jewelry I like and sends me those kind of offers. Or if I go to a high, if I'm going to Amazon, Amazon is continuously feeding me with stuff that I like or search for. Similarly, for your employees, if you can customize it, that's a great way to retain your top performers.
Yeah. So the next question is from Anthony Devraj. He says, thanks for a wonderful presentation. And he wants to know, how do we incorporate this for the team which is size of lesser than 10 employees? During initial part of the company, we find a lot of attritions due to new startup.
Yeah. Okay. So how do we do this for a startup really? So in a startup, there are several challenges on performance management, because see, when you are a team of less than 10, even while you take up individual roles, it is so important for everybody to share in the company goal, because everybody has to work together to make it happen. So I would actually say that you will look at group rewards more than individual rewards when your team is less than 10 people. So for example, you can say that if as a company we are able to hit this number by this, we can all take back a performance bonus of so much. So those are ways that you can build a very inclusive workplace for very small teams. Make it more about shared rewards than individual rewards. But it's still important to ensure that you give people individual accountability, you help them to grow in their functions, because otherwise what happens is, and I've seen this, when your organization scales, you will find a whole lot of generalists there and no specialists. And that's really because in the early days, you frittered away all the specialization that people brought by making everybody accountable for everything. So even while you have the shared responsibility, ensure that people know what their functions are and develop in that, know what trends are happening and all of that, because that's how you ensure the future of the organization and the future of these employees. Attrition, I'm expecting, is more at lower levels than at the senior most levels. If it is at the senior most levels, then I would be a little concerned. I would say that you need to look at it more deeply to understand why is it that people are not staying on. Are you hiring the right people?
Yeah. So the next question is from Anand Ahuja. He's from Chennai, and he wants to know, how do you create high performance reviews in small organizations of 15 to 30 people? We are a small organization wherein we make machines. Building a machine is not a repetitive task. Every machine is a project which takes about 3 months.
Excellent question. Yeah. I'm actually excited about this because I'm doing something very similar for someone now. What would help, Anand, is to ensure that if you're saying that a machine has to be built in 3 months, ensure that you have a time plan for it, month by month, what needs to be done. Or if it is 3 months, you probably need a week by week plan and a way to feed how we are progressing to the entire team. So have some celebrations when people hit those milestones, have some brainstorming sessions on what can be done. See, building a high performance organization is not just about a performance management system. It's really about exciting the whole team to get it done. And the opportunity to do this is far higher with a team of less than 50 than it is with a team of 5,000 employees. So you're really sitting at a very exciting, on top of a very exciting organization, and you have a tremendous opportunity to create a very high performance culture. Yeah. I hope that answered.
Yeah. So next question is from Dinesh Ram Singh. He again thanks you for a good session, and we fix awards and deliver that, but when think about accountability, it's difficult for us. Please suggest some examples how to make accountability when the targets are not met.
Yeah. So this starts from the planning phase. If your accountability at that phase is clear. So for example, I'll give you one typical example. Okay, so there is this organization which has taken on a goal of saying that they will do a business of 10 crores in this year. Okay. Now the sales team has said that they will do that. They have a 2-member sales team, and then there is a product development team which says that they will develop the product. Now last year they did not meet their targets. And why was that? They realized, the sales guy said that, the product didn't come on time. How do you expect me to sell when a product doesn't come on time? The product development guy said, I didn't get my people on time. The resources were not there. How do you expect me to turn out a product when... So it was all about finger pointing and talking about, hey, this person didn't do that, so how can you hold me accountable for this? So this year, the company said that this is the goal and we have joint accountability for it. So all of us share in this goal. So all of us will be penalized if we don't achieve this goal, point one. Point two, towards this, we have individual accountability that each person has to do. Every month, we will review where we are on these timelines. So if the product development guy says that he will have the customization ready in the first 3 months, every week we will review whether that is in progress. The sales leader also will sit in, and if something is not happening, the CEO said that he will actually personally step in and ensure it happens. Now, when you do continuous reviews, it really helps to ensure that everybody meets their goals. There is also, very often we don't really capture the potential that pure pure competition could have. So if I see that everybody else is meeting their goals, I'm also charged up to meet my goals. So therefore, those monthly reviews to ensure that those who are accountable are doing what they're supposed to be doing really help. And the planning process at the beginning, where you're saying that we have 5 objectives, these are the accountabilities for each of these 5. These are the people who are accountable, and you track it during month after month. Don't allow people to give you PowerPoint presentations on what works and what doesn't. Make sure that it is objective and issue based and point based. Okay, so those are great ways.
Yeah. Next question is again from Jayashree. In startup organizations where the remuneration is not very high, how to motivate and scale good performance?
Yeah. The whole advantage of a startup is that you can sell a dream to a candidate. Many candidates join startups because they're fed up of working in large organizations where everything is mandated, everything is structured, there's very little day-to-day excitement. The whole startup is about excitement. Now, it is so very important in a startup to share that excitement with everybody. How do you do that? You do that through inclusion. The best startups always ensure that all their employees feel absolutely charged up about what we are setting out to do. They have a sense of tremendous passion about it. They feel that they would give their lives for it. That is the best way to build a startup organization. So in a startup, it's not even so much about systems and processes and all of that. It's really about everybody owning that goal and feeling that, hey, this is something that I want to live by. So how do you do that is really what leadership and HR should be focusing on.
Yeah. Next question is also from Dinesh. Please explain about how to fix aligned goals at leadership level as a joint goal, and provide some example.
Okay. So I don't know whether this will help you, but here's one example. So there is this organization which wants to get the best places to work award. Okay. So that is a team responsibility. That is something which everybody is accountable for, because obviously HR cannot do it alone. So that is one example of a shared accountability. And the leader says that if we get the best places to work, all of you will get points on your performance management system, on your score. And you will, it's about ensuring that everybody shares in the success of that. But at the same time, it is important to have individual goals and accountability. So you will have the sales leader focused on the sales numbers, the production on the production goals and so on. But there are also some areas which are shared, and you ensure it is all aligned. Now, the alignment of individual goals is also important. You do that by when an individual has set goals, you look at the goals and see how does this contribute to the company objective. Look at the linkage of each goal and establish that there is alignment. That is one way to align.
Yeah, and that's it on the chat. And we have Palak Shah and Jawahar who's raised their hand. So I'll unmute Palak Shah first.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Palak. How are you?
Yeah, ma'am, this is Palak here.
Yes.
Okay. So I had a question. It's a bit similar to startup organization only. So in a startup where you are continuously going through the restructuring of teams, and sometimes it becomes a continuous, like you have done with the one segment of team, and then again the restructuring of other set of team happens. So we are a startup. Are a startup of 60 to 70 people, and we tried to start with the standard performance management system a few months ago. But the biggest challenge that we were facing was the restructuring phase. So we were not being clear of where to start, or it's like that we set one thing for one particular set of people and then things get changed and the whole efforts got wasted, then again back to same square one. So that was the challenge that we are facing even currently also. So I wanted your inputs on this.
Yeah. Palak, as a startup, it is extremely important to be flexible because, the canvas keeps changing and everything keeps changing. The way to manage a performance management system there would be to take up smaller windows of time. Don't do a year-long program. Set goals for 2 months and review it at the end of 2 months. Set goals for the next 2 months and review it so you need to be a lot more agile and dynamic when you're dealing with a startup.
Okay.
Because everything keeps changing, and you're absolutely right. You set up a performance management system, and 6 months down the line, everything has changed. And at the end of the year, when you're trying to review it, people are saying, no, but I wasn't working on this. I was working on something else.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So keep it very dynamic. Keep it for small periods of time so that you can keep revisiting it.
But won't that create a dispute among employees? Maybe as an HR person at the company, I introduced one set of system for a particular 2 to 3 months. And then later on, we discovered that this was something that is not perfectly fit for us and we need to change it. And then we again change maybe the system and maybe the way reviews happen, maybe the way feedback happens. So if that keeps on happening.
Yes, no. So I think you misunderstood what I said. You cannot change the system and the way you do reviews or any of that continuously. What you can change is the goals, but the system cannot keep changing. The system, please, before you adopt a system, have a detailed discussion. It's like when I always tell young families that when you're setting up home, buy the best of things. Think it through. You may not be able to afford. Have fewer things, but have good things. Don't buy stuff which is use and throw. It's the same with the systems and processes that you set up. Think of the future when you design a system today, especially in a startup. Think of how it will kick you back 3 years later, 5 years later. And a lot of the work that I do with SMEs is really the bad decisions that they took in the startup days, which are hurting them today. So spend that time, brainstorm it, look at what we need, and then design it. But don't change the system. What you should change, though, what you should be very open to changing are the goals, because that's where the canvas can change and all of that. And employees will absolutely appreciate it, that you're being very understanding of the changing reality. So I hope that answers.
Yeah, that definitely does. Thank you.
We have another question on chat from Surender Ram Singh. Can you give an example as to how we can measure the performance of a person like a cashier and how we can align them to our goals?
Oh, very good question. So a cashier really qualifies in the performance standards template. because, is that role important? Of course it is important, but these are standard roles which have standard templates. So what are the expectations from a cashier? One is error-free work, so there should be no errors. Two, that all cash balances should be tallied at the end of the day. That is a second one. A third one is attendance and punctuality, because that is important. So I'm saying that you have to differentiate a cashier's job from a CFO's job. A CFO's job, you will look at performance goals which are aligned to the organization goals. A cashier's role, you still want to measure performance, but you will do it in a standardized way, because the role really, so it's based on the impact of the role on organizational results. Does it have an individual impact? Does it have tremendous individual impact? Or does it have a role-based impact? Now, a cashier's role is really based on a very standardized role. So I would really recommend that you put down performance standards, which are expectations from that role, and measure that person year after year on that. So that person is also clear on what are the expectations. Okay. You may even want to give 1 point on going beyond one's role, if that's an expectation in your organization. Very often in startups and small organizations, we need people to go beyond what they're expected to do. So put that in as an expectation from employees, that we expect you to go beyond. So it's about clarifying expectations and setting realistic targets for people. So a cashier's role should be a performance standard one.
Yeah, so we have Jawahar. Do you have a few minutes to answer?
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
Okay. Ma'am, can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, Jawahar, I can hear you.
Ma'am, I have a few questions. So when the time stops, you can tell me, ma'am, I'll stop.
No, I'm conscious of everyone else on the call also. So
okay, yeah, if somebody else has a question, you can feel free to interrupt me. So,
yeah.
Okay.
And feel free to drop off if you need to, because I'm aware that people will have other things to do. So those of you who would like to stay on, please stay on. But others, if you need to drop off and attend to other things, please do feel free to do that. Thank you so much for attending. I've enjoyed these interactions. I've enjoyed the questions. I learn each time. So thank you very much. Feel free to drop off if you need to. But Jawahar, I'm staying on. So
okay,
anyone else who would like to stay on, please do. Yes.
I'm a little bit quite inquisitive person. So, I have a lot of questions every time. That to your class, I feel like asking too many questions. Sorry about it.
No, happy to do that. Go ahead.
One thing is, so when the company is not doing well, especially in times like COVID, where there is no money flow, right? And then see this year, if a employee performs really well, but still, as a company, we are not making profits. How do you reward that employee?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and I think a dilemma that many companies are going through now. So for example, take a company where orders are just not flowing in. Now the question is, as an employer, do you want to say that I will protect jobs and salaries, but I will not give increments this year? That is one stand that you could take. You may be in a situation where it is important to give job cuts, salary cuts, and you're debating, should I do it across the board or should I do it to only a few people? Now, these are all philosophical questions based on the culture of the organization that you're driving. Yes, Dinesh, yes, it's an important question. But it all depends on the culture of the organization that you're driving. If you're driving a culture where we are very inclusive, we take care of people, which is a way to hold people together, then you may say that we will all take a salary cut, start from the top to the bottom, but we will ensure nobody loses a job. If you are an organization where a few people play a high impact role, and for you, it is so critical that you retain them And it's not really important that you retain everybody else. You will take a very business related decision of reducing pay for just that person and not for everybody else. The whole idea is, how do you ensure that you come across as credible to the employees? So it shouldn't be that the employees feel that the boss is taking advantage of the situation by cutting my pay. You need to be very transparent to the person in terms of what is happening in the industry, what is happening with our customers, why are we in this situation, and how, and why are we doing this? We are doing this to guarantee the future. If you do that and communicate with a lot of genuineness, there is an opportunity to actually turn the situation into a huge gain. I'll give you one example. A company that went through a very tough time 2 years back, where they actually told their employees, a lot of them took salary cuts, but the ownership and the engagement level of the employees was that high because they felt the owner is trusting me to help him with this. And there was a huge sense of engagement. Top performer attrition actually went down in the company because people felt that I am able to impact this company and playing a very important role. So it's a lot about leadership communication, how the leaders walk the talk, how do they communicate with employees. That is key really in this time, at this time, especially when people are working remote, are not in office. There's a lot of anxiety. So very important to communicate continuously.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. My second question is, whenever we have, awards being given to employees, right? If we give bonus or stock options or anything like that, it is all confidential and nobody else knows about it. But when you give, the top 3 employees of a department, or when you give awards in an annual function for the top performer of the company, these things, the others come to know, okay, this guy has really performed well, and so his bonus and the other things should be really high. So then an element of jealousy comes into other people in the team. And I have seen instances like this where the other people in the team, they don't cooperate with this guy who got selected as the best person in the team after this award was given. So how do you manage this situation where people in the team feel jealous about the person who got the award? Your thoughts, man?
Yeah, these are all such real situations that you're bringing up, and I've faced some of this. The worst thing that an organization can do is to say that this will upset all the other employees, will create jealousy and will make life tough for you. So just keep it very secret, don't tell anybody. Whereas part of the joy is to be acknowledged that, hey, this guy's got promoted, this guy's got awarded. That's part of the reward, really, to know that. Now, how can you ensure that others don't feel that way? One is to ensure that there is a cross-functional team that decides the rewards. And there is a questioning process. It is not decided by the boss and the reviewing authority. There is a cross-functional team of leaders who goes into it in detail, and that brings credibility to the process. The parameters or the criteria based on which you're giving those awards or should be announced beforehand. So don't make it that, suddenly I have realized that these 3 people have done a tremendous job and therefore I'm going to reward them. Declare those awards in advance. Say that we have best performer awards. The criteria for best performer awards are this. Everybody has a great chance to win this. We want all of you to win this. You do that upfront, and then you announce the awards at the end of it. There'll be less heartburn, and everybody feels that, yes, I could win this next year. It's really about giving people that feeling that you can actually, you have a good shot at this too.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot. Very good insight.
Thank you for the questions, Jawahar.
Yeah, one more question I had was, what are your thoughts on 360-degree performance review, ma'am? Because I've seen people tell me that not only the bosses review, but also their subordinates, their peers also review them in certain companies. They give feedbacks as to how this person interacts with them, how this person interacts in a team events, things like that. So is it fair review when you do a 360-degree review?
I would say a 360-degree review is a great idea, but I would use it for development and not for performance measurement. The problem with using it for performance measurement is that who is the best judge of my performance? It is me and my manager. Now, an employee sees me, may have an axe to grind, may not understand everything that I do, and so therefore gives a feedback. But what I definitely want feedback from the employee about is, for example, you said that attitude, how I treat them. Those are all areas for development. So I would use it as part of development and not to measure performance. Okay. Yeah, and Kavita's got a point there, which I think we should also take on board.
Okay, ma'am. Just one last question. Hope you have time. Quick question, ma'am. So what is the dispute resolution process? Say if the boss and the subordinate don't agree on the performance review, and both of them have contradict on certain things. Certain companies have two levels. The boss and the boss's boss review it. So what are the methodologies that I can adopt in case of dispute resolutions?
Yeah. So companies have different practices. One practice is to say that the boss has to present to his boss the performance reviews of all his people before he sits with them in a discussion. So the boss's boss gets a chance to ensure and validate and ensure that there is fairness which is visible. The other is to ensure that the employee also has a box where the employee can give comments, and have a skip level meeting with the boss's boss separately for the employee to voice their concerns. So I would actually say that the boss's boss is the person who should mediate in this.
Okay, ma'am. Thanks a lot, ma'am. Very insightful. Thank you so much for all your answers.
Thank you. Appreciate the questions.
Have a nice evening.
Yeah, thank you. Priya, thank you so much for facilitating this. Thank you everyone for your participation. Thank you for all the questions. I enjoyed this session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. And see you next week with all the participants as well. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so
much. See you. See you everyone. Have a nice evening. Bye.